All right, hello, welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Maddie B. Trying to do something different. We've been teasing it for a while, changing up to the show. Basically, this is going to be the last episode that we broadcast live on Facebook. We're going to be moving the live video to Patreon. So you can go to patreon.com/southboundsports, probably tomorrow when this airs on podcast. If you're watching live feed, it might not be up yet. But we're working on getting that up. There, you're going to be able to get the extended version of the show where we talk about some things. Before we even kicked it off, we were talking about the onside kick from Scott Frost, which is our main topic of this week. And my thing with it and their offense, like he came out and called out Whipple from Pitt and was like, yeah, we did some good things till the end of the game, but his onside kick changed the game entirely. You're up 28 to like 17 or whatever it was. You don't get the onside kick. Northwestern immediately scores. I text you like, well, that was dumb. Like, I don't care if Nebraska wins. I'm not a fan of them. I think that them winning would be good for the Big Ten. You see guys like Herb Street be like, oh yeah, Nebraska's going to win the Big Ten West, and blah, blah, blah. Some people are like, yeah, they have a better chance. They have the best chance other than Ohio State to make the playoffs. And it's like, why? And they're like, well, they only have to beat Ohio State. I'm like, wouldn't that be true for Penn State? Wouldn't that be true for like Michigan? Like, if you're good enough that you're beating Ohio State, you're most likely going to beat the Western team. I don't see how Nebraska gets that edge. And then I watched them choke after that. And then he blamed the offense when his defense gave up 500-something yards. To me, that's the only difference. I don't know what his defense was like at UCF. I never really looked it up. But I will say Nebraska defense should not be giving up 500 yards to Northwestern. They killed them last year. Like, Nebraska blew Northwestern out. Everyone thought the team was turning around. That was the turning point. It was going to save Scott Frost, and then they lost, 6 in a row?
But they were close scores, though.
Yeah, they out-hit them. They out-threw them up. They had, more throw-ups by their linemen.
5-star hearts.
He doesn't even have 5-star hearts, because he would definitely bring that up if they did. There's nothing on that team, to me, that's redeeming. And that's the scary thing.
Well, here's the other, this was the most insane stat of all of the stats. I saw that if he were to win the next 50 games, he still wouldn't have a better win percentage than Bo Pelini. And I remember when they fired Bo Pelini, it was the worst thing in the history of worst things.
See, I didn't mind Bo Pelini, and I've said countless times, probably to you, and you probably blocked it out, but I told you, why did they fire that guy? And I thought that another team should give him a chance because after he left, I know he went to Youngstown State and then he had issues with anger or whatever, or maybe some off-the-field stuff, I can't remember. But they had 9 wins a year. They haven't come close to that since. So maybe if he actually coached a team like Illinois or someone, they might be pretty damn good. I think the other one, though, is isn't Brett Bielema at Illinois right now? So that might be the measuring stick because he kind of did the same thing. Was he good at Wisconsin because of the system they had there? And he was only bad at Arkansas because of whatever issues they're having. I saw someone had Arkansas in the playoffs, though. So, is Arkansas not that bad and Brett Bielema just sucks? And once Barry Alvarez wasn't puppet mastering him, he's garbage. But, I mean, that's a true thing, right? You can't tell me that every coach at Wisconsin has been consistent since Barry Alvarez has been there. They're just magically run the same Wisconsin offense. It's like their basketball team. It's like they have someone being like, look, the entire state only plays this offense. That's what we have to run. And then we're going to recruit it. Why can't we recruit nationally? Don't joke about that. Please.
On Wisconsin.
We have a system in place. What are you doing? Do you want to be Minnesota? And then it's no. Or do you want to be Illinois? Because we can be. They're right there. They're rivals with us. But, man, Nebraska, I don't even know what to say about them. Is USC coming into the conference even going to help them, or UCLA? Plus, we don't even know if UCLA is coming. They're still going through their issues or whatever out west. But I think that they're probably going to be in. I don't think the state's going to be able to get rid of people like that. I don't know. We'll see what happens. But let's get into the other college game, Matt, that everyone watched. The Wyoming-Illinois game, right? Because I know they didn't watch Florida State-Duquesne.
Why would you not watch the Dukes?
Actually, I thought I was turning that game on, and you know what the old ACC network did to me? They made me watch UNC. And I thought, why? I actually didn't want to watch either of these games. But then I saw UNC like struggling. Florida A&M were down. They didn't have 40 guys with them. That's unbelievable. I was like, are you kidding me? Like, that's almost like Claysburg going up against one of those Catholic schools, right, Matt? Or
that's about it.
What did you call them, the parochial schools the other week?
Yeah.
That's a callback. But I watched that game, and I was like, we'll get into Claysburg right after this. I saw the UNC, and I'm like, how are they struggling this bad with A&M? One of their linemen gets hurt. And then I'm like, didn't they only have 7? Like, if one or two more guys get hurt, like even if they get banged up, who plays offensive line for them?
Just take a tight end, Do
they even have a tight end? Some offenses don't even recruit a tight end.
You just find the next biggest guy, and you're like, all right.
Yeah, but they're already down 40 other guys. It's not like, hey, 4 of our linemen got hurt at practice. It's like, yeah, 40 guys can't come. And then they wrote a letter to the school president, but it's like, at this point, just cancel the program. How is your school such a disaster that you can't even get classes in place? And like people are taking classes that didn't count. It sounded like it was pretty fitting that they played UNC, right? With their academic scandal of fake classes. They could have just named that like the academic
bowl.
Yeah, the academic issues bowl. Sponsored by Cheetos or something. Nah, it needs to be something crappier than that. I don't mind Cheetos. Whatever the crappiest snack is, that's what you can think. That soon would be the sponsor. So I'll leave it up to your imagination. Why are you laughing? What would be your worst snack? Like if you came into my house and I said, hey, cuz, you want these? What would you be like? Why did you buy those?
I'm not a fan of Skittles.
Not even if I put them in vodka?
No. Not even if you'd put them in vodka. I might throw up if you did that.
You don't want to taste the rainbow?
Should just have PTSD.
Man, I hate like those candies that old people have. Like, what are those, like little caramel chews?
Werther's
like,
Original.
Those Werther's, or like the old wax candy old people used to give you when you're trick or treating.
Saltwater taffy. No,
like the Coke bottle, is like wax, and inside there's like a sliver of like some type of candy, and they're like, chew through that wax, buddy. There's a treat in there for you. It's like, is this why you have no teeth? It's like you're chewing wax all the time. Good grief! I'm not taking advice from someone that has both dentures full. This isn't candy. This is torture. So I haven't seen those in a long time, trick-or-treating. And I try to do the same thing because it's not even Halloween, but football season reminds me of this. But like, I'm like, which candy should I buy? Obviously candy that I like to eat. Because if no trick-or-treaters show up and you bought some wax garbage, then you're stuck chewing it or you have to throw it out. So buy some good stuff. That's my tip. Dude, we'll make that our tailgating tip, not Halloween. I'll bring the same exact tip in for Halloween, though. For all the people not listening to the show. But you had a great game on Saturday. The feed was great. Or Friday, yeah.
Yeah. It very easily could have gone sideways.
Well, I almost named the show 2 passes, 1 drive. Because you threw 2 passes that one drive, and then you scored a touchdown on the second like screen pass.
Well, I knew I had a quota I had to meet. I'll be damned if I'm going to be doing push-ups on the show.
Yeah, I know. We never decided a punishment, but you really opened it up in the second half. I was like, doesn't he know he's winning? Harbaugh would never be throwing the ball this much. But like the first,
Harbaugh couldn't even decide who his quarterback's going to be.
We'll save that for later in the show. Don't talk bad about my man. Actually, we'll save that post credits. You have to be a Patreon to hear that combo. We'll start with the feed, like the actual quality resolution, it was better than watching the Pac-12 network. But the camera work needed some desire, which also reminded me of the UNC game. So for whatever reason, they shut the camera down. They said there's lightning in the area. And I was thinking, shouldn't they delay the game? Like, what kind of lightning only affects ESPN cameras? They're like, damn it, that's our lightning. Come on, guys, wrap it up. We have to use a stadium camera.
Well, like they had and I think they put one at like the highest part of the stadium trying to get hit by lightning.
No, I think that was in the booth. Like, I think they switched to, he called it the all 22 cam. I think that was just like the press box one camera that would be in, like, you couldn't hit by lightning because it's in the building. So they're like, well, we got to take all of our cameras away from here. And they're like, well, they're already down 40 guys. Is it safe for them to be playing? Well, we're focused on the cameras right now. If it gets closer, maybe we'll worry about the players. Like, weren't we at that one Pitt game that got delayed?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they cared then. Not at UNC, I guess. Plus, you would think there's a lot of empty seats. Like, that's a lot of bleacher for that lightning to hit. Maybe they thought that if there's no one in that bleacher, no one gets electrocuted, right?
They rolled the dice.
Not unless the bleachers are touching. They're like, well, do we really want all 25 fans to get out of here? That's what I feel bad. That's the only reason people were like, hey, do you think UNC should be in the Big Ten? And I'm like, for what? Like, all sports? Because I would love to see them. I would love to see Michigan play them and Duke every year because I could get an easy ticket. And the stadium would be like 95% Michigan fans. It would be like Rutgers South. Or actually, Rutgers hasn't even been that bad. I guess they have been bad. But Maryland's been equally as bad in terms of like, hey, Michigan's playing there. Oh, the stands are all Michigan fans. That's what Duke and UNC would be. They can pretend that it wouldn't be, but it would be all. Same with Ohio State. And hell, Penn State. There's a lot of Penn State fans around here, unfortunately. So for those three, I actually have my Michigan shirt on right now. I don't know if you can see it on the live vid. I actually wore it within 10 minutes, man. 2 people. The first guy came up and said, man, I hate Ohio State. And I was like, awesome. That's one cool guy right there. And then this other old lady came up and was like, is that a Michigan shirt? I'm from Ohio. Ohio State's the best. I was like, I'm really sorry to hear that. And why are you talking to me? And then her other old friend is like, is that some kind of sports rivalry? And I was like, you must be a UNC fan. I know you guys don't get it. Only show, because they spent at least 10 minutes of that broadcast showing Michael Jordan shoes and talking about Michael Jordan. And I thought he had nothing to do with football. Like, can you not name one UNC football player that you could talk about? What about Julius Peppers? Right?
Yeah.
They have other guys. Hakeem Nicks, wasn't he there?
Yes, he was.
I don't know if he had staying power. I don't know too many UNC guys. Oh, our boy Mitch Trubisky, which we'll get into. But your game, man, like I said, I know I was joking about the passes. You guys took a lead, and that one drive I was talking about, you guys were struggling with the run, and then you threw a pass, and I don't really know what happened because the camera didn't move. So I was like, did they catch it? Then no one was on screen, so I thought they had to have caught it unless he threw an interception. And then they zoom up. So you might have threw another pass. I don't know. But then you ran a couple times, nothing happened. And then you threw a screen that went for the touchdown. And I thought, that's 2 passes, man. 2 passes that made all your yards on that drive.
Yeah.
And then you must have realized it because then once you guys had the lead, you kept trying to throw the ball, which they weren't even like adapting to it, which kind of surprised me. But the guys couldn't catch it. And I was like, is he going to lose on passing? Because I'm never going to hear the end of it on the show.
Well, what was bad was early in the game, like into the second quarter, we had a lead, and then they just started to run the ball right down our throats, and we weren't in our run fits correctly, and it was giving us some issues. And as we're trying to like troubleshoot where the issues are, it starts raining, and it's like. It's raining sideways. It's not even raining like traditional down rain.
Really?
Like my left pant leg, we're standing on the sideline. Like my left pant leg was completely soaked, but like the outside of my right pant leg was dry. Like I was like completely saturated on half of it.
I couldn't even tell it was raining, to be honest.
Like it was really bad. And then we were in the locker room, we're getting ready to walk out, and our trainer came in and was like, "You're on a 30-minute effective now. You're on a 30-minute delay." So we had an extra 30 minutes at halftime.
Oh, is that what happened?
Yeah.
You didn't text me an update.
Well, that's because I was too angry.
And then I didn't really have the sound on at first, and then because I didn't think anyone was talking, because there was a lot of dead air, so I muted it, and then I heard. Oh, I didn't mute it all the way. I just turned it down, and then I heard like someone talking. I'm like, "Where's that coming from?" And then that's when I realized that they were talking on the channel, and I was like, "Oh, maybe they would be filling me in on what's going on instead of me waiting and wondering why the game's still on so late." But I mean,
yeah. So we had a delay, and then the whole time that we're having this delay, we're going back through like changes that we need to make, and like they were a lot bigger than us. They were like every team that we play is essentially going to be twice our size. There's not a game we're going to go in being physically bigger than, which it has its own issues. So like we knew going in they were going to be bigger. They were a younger team like us, but we knew that they were going to have more size. And it was like, well, how do you combat that? And as we were starting to go back through, it was like, well, they're being like they're taking away a lot of our run. We have to throw. I thought, oh great, we ended the first half in a torrential downpour. Like, how's it? Like, I refuse to put quarterbacks in a bad spot where you're like, oh yeah, the rain's driving right in your face. Throw passes, throw deep, chuck it up there, see what happens. Like that's a recipe for disaster. And we stepped out, and it didn't even. It looked like a field had just reset. Like the sky was dark and clear. It was like went out on the field. Like the footing I didn't think was impaired at all. Like the footballs were wet and the uniforms were wet. It's like, all right, let's just go do our thing. Like we could go back to the game plan and hit on some of the things that we worked on through the week. And I was really happy that some of the stuff that we really worked heavily on in the summer actually produced for us. I mean, 2 of our scores were off of things that we tinkered with in the summer that at first I was like, this is almost too good to be true, and found guys open.
Yeah, your team looked good. I did point out, or I didn't point out to you, you probably already knew, but with the size issue, because I saw how small you were on film watching the first 2 scrimmages as they were at it, and I was like, man, the first one, I thought maybe that team's just big. And then the second one, I'm like, nah, his team's small. And you hadn't mentioned it or complained about it, so I'm like, that's good coach talk for you.
Well, I just figured like there's no point in complaining about, because we're always.
You should say that to Scott Frost though, so he knows.
No, because then Nebraska won't hire me.
Did you send in your resume?
Look, they don't even have to sign me to a mega deal. Just give me $1 million and I'll resign, effective immediately.
Well, you can say, come on, do you really want to hire another guy with Nebraska ties? Because, I mean, after the performance, I wouldn't. My thing with it, though, is like your team looked good. I did have one other question for you, though. You had a guy dressed up as like a cowboy on the sideline. What's up with that? Did you do that? Why are you laughing? That was the water guy, so I didn't know if you were like...
That was our trainer.
Yeah, you dress up as a cowboy because then when the kids need water, they'll know where to look for. Now, if all your coaches came out...
That's just how they dress in Utah.
You're in Claysburg, bro. That's Pennsylvania.
Yeah, but our trainer's from Utah.
What made him come to Pennsylvania? He thought that's where he's going to learn under a coach.
He wanted to learn. He wanted to learn the ways of the Force.
Because next week, if I turn on and all you and all your coaches and the trainer are dressed as cowboys, then I'm going to be suspicious.
We're all just going to be wearing vests and Wranglers.
Well, should that be another Claysburg piece of gear I didn't get access to from you? I did have a girl once come out on a date. She's like, "Are you wearing Wranglers?" I'm like, "I don't know." Like who knows what jeans you're wearing? And she's like, "I don't date guys wearing Wranglers." I'm like, "Well, let me check because this might be over then." Unfortunately, that's a true story.
Did the date end right there? Inquiring minds need to know.
No, but it did end. That was the only date, bro. It was the most out of left field thing, and I was like, "Did her dad wear these?" Like, that in hindsight, that's what should have been my response. Like, why did your dad wear Wranglers? Because is it a dad issue? Because I don't know what else it could cause that type of hatred. Unless you bought like yourself 10 pairs and they all ripped immediately, and you had like an embarrassing like issue with them. So you're like, I'll never date a man in them. And to even know on look, like I could never tell. But maybe that's your thing. Because like if you're wearing like a Nebraska shirt, or like if you're a Pitt fan, you see someone wearing a Penn State shirt, that's pretty easy to tell. Like, is that a Penn State shirt? We can't be friends. But like, are those Wranglers? I don't know.
You son of a bitch!
I don't know. You think I buy jeans? Like,
I don't know. I've had the same pants for 10 years.
Whatever my mom bought me, like that should be a compliment for you. I'm still fitting into high school stuff. What are you talking about? We'll use that as our segue into the NFL. My boy Jimmy G re-signed by the 49ers, and I'm like, I'm waiting for him. My other guy that I've been watching for fantasy reasons, Cole Beasley, because I think he could come back. I think he might be getting blackballed because of his non-COVID vaccine thing, right? Because he's been, every time I hear like he's tied to whatever, some team's interested in him, he's back in the news for his anti-vax statement. He was making statements again today. It's like,
I'm surprised that Rodgers doesn't push for the Packers to sign him.
Well, that's what I thought was going to happen, to be honest. But Aaron Rodgers was doing a cycle. That's what brought this up. And then Cole Beasley was pointing out. So I thought, well, I mean, is he going to end up with the Packers? Because Aaron Rodgers has been complaining about him. But then maybe Packers ownership doesn't want that headache. You know? It's almost like, I don't know what's going to happen. Like Jimmy G, he has no ties to any of that. I saw people were saying that Jimmy G is the reason the 49ers lost 2 Super Bowls. I'm like, did he lose them? Like, was he Neil O'Donnelling it out there? Just throwing the ball to the other team? I don't remember that. Maybe I'm wrong. But like Neil O'Donnell looked like he could have been throwing the game. And just as a reminder, I was probably like 8 when that game was on. So I probably don't remember really well. So if Neil O'Donnell played an awesome game, I doubt he did. But
Neil O'Donnell, if you're listening to this,
yeah, come onto the show and defend yourself. Because
explain yourself.
Yeah, I haven't heard you speak on the performance after that, my man. Which would be funny if he was on the show. We'll start getting tweets just like the Tony Dungy. I make fun of Tony Dungy. People start calling me out. Only one guy. It's like, are you Tony Dungy? Like, why are you doing that? But if Neil O'Donnell started to do that, I would just laugh. But what do you think for Jimmy G? Because we'll leave the Cole Beasley stuff. We don't need to get into weird COVID stuff. I'm past that.
I mean, with Jimmy G, I think it's enough of a deal that if like he can hedge himself in the event that Lance gets hurt, the 49ers aren't completely hung out to dry. It gives him the out that he can completely leave in free agency the following year if I read his contract correctly.
Well, I'm just going to say this. I think it's pretty clear that Lance sucks. Right? What other team in history was like, hey, we're going to get our next guy in here? Even the 49ers with Joe Montana didn't keep him around. It was like, yeah, we're going to go with Steve Young, but Joe Montana, we really need you to just be back up. Like, no, they dealt him to the Chiefs, man. And then he did really well there.
But I think you can also say on the opposite side, the Niners got value for Montana. Is anyone putting anything out there for Garoppolo?
So I think this is more 49ers misdirection. Any value would be better than having the controversy, right? Look at what Baker Mayfield and the Browns did.
Hell no.
They get rid of him. Then the Browns had like their own little thing. They were talking about maybe trading for someone else or whatever. But at least your locker room, some of the guys, you can't tell me that all of the guys are in on Team Lance. There are going to be other guys, veterans on the team that look around and be like, the first sign of struggle, they're going to say, man, we were almost in the Super Bowl last year with Jimmy G. And now he's on the bench just hanging out, pretending like Tom Brady's in front of him. I just don't think it's going to work. And if they get it to work, great on them. But like I said, I would be absolutely shocked if Jimmy G isn't traded, number one. And number two, if he isn't, then Trey Lance has to just be done. And you're going to kill the value for him. You're going to kill the value for him. I mean, I just don't get it. And I don't understand why, if they're not sold on him, why do you keep pushing Lance? Why don't you get rid of him? Because the worst thing you want to do is get another Carson Wentz situation like the Eagles had. Except Nick Foles won the Super Bowl. Jimmy G didn't. And they were like, well, we're going to get rid of Nick Foles and go with Wentz because everyone says Wentz is better. Wentz wasn't better. I feel like that's what we're going to see happen to the 49ers. Lance comes in. He's not better. It's really awkward for the team. Except in this scenario, Nick Foles would have been back for another year. The dream 49ers would just be a mirror of that Eagles season where Lance plays well enough to get them to the playoffs. Jimmy G comes in fresh and wins the Super Bowl. And then they get rid of him the next year. Or they make the smart move and get rid of Lance. I don't know. I think if the Cleveland Browns situation has proved anything, if you have the quarterbacks, you need to hang on to them. You can't hold all the quarterbacks, though. Like the Packers are kind of doing the same thing. Like, do you get rid of Love? You're keeping Aaron Rodgers around. By the time Aaron Rodgers is done playing, how many years is Love going to have that are going to be, like, is he going to be able to just come in and play? Or is he just going to be the backup that then is gone? Because then pretty much then you're going to be in a Steelers situation where, hey, the guys are gone. Now we have to bring in all these free agents and hopefully someone takes off. Or you're stuck with the Seahawks where it's like, yeah, we're going to go with Geno maybe. We wish someone would just give us a quarterback because we have no plan. And Pete Carroll, do you think he would retire after like a losing season like this?
He might. I mean, depending on what the locker room situation's like.
He seems like he's a guy all about his legacy. I really don't think that if you're willing to do like behind the scenes stuff at USC like he did, I don't think you want to go out as a loser. But maybe that's just me reading into it.
But at that point, you've won Super Bowls, you've won national championships, you've done everything that you've needed to do.
Or he could
Peace out.
Lincoln Riley chokes, and Pete Carroll comes in, struts into the Big Ten. How old will he be? Like 80? He's like, "Hey, fellow kids, I'm back, baby." Scott Frost is there.
This time I can.
His salary's down to
$100,000
$100,000 a year. He's like, "They said I had to make a bowl game." Pete Carroll's like, "Well, I'm back, baby. Don't worry about that. We'll take the West from here." They couldn't find anyone else to coach Nebraska. I don't get it. But any other NFL stuff you got? Because we don't even have. It's still considered what? The preseason? Are there any games left?
Yeah, the Steelers played.
No, I mean this coming week, like coming up.
I don't know. I haven't thought that far ahead.
Your boy Gruden, in the meantime, while I look this up, he's said his emails were shameful, but he's still a good guy. Just to keep that in mind, Matt.
Just wanting a shot somewhere.
So no, I think it's done. Right? Or is ESPN thing's gone? Yeah, it's weird because remember last year I thought that they were going to move it up to the whatever. All the preseason games are done now. Steelers, everyone thinks it's going to be Trubisky. What do you think? He's the guy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I like Pickett. I think he's the better quarterback. I just don't think you start him right away.
No.
What quarterbacks? I was thinking about this when I watched the game a little bit. I was thinking, what big-time quarterbacks started immediately? Did Patrick Mahomes? Wasn't he behind Alex Smith?
Yes.
Aaron Rodgers was behind Brett Favre, the that fraudster. And then we have, who else? Ben Roethlisberger sat behind Tommy Maddox. Tom Brady sat behind Drew Bledsoe. Did Russell Wilson start right away? Like I'm trying to think of like what quarterback that
Peyton
won
Manning
a Super Bowl.
started right away.
That was like a bazillion years ago. And did he really win a Super Bowl, Matt?
Debatable.
Rex Grossman just handed it to him. He said,
no, he threw it to him.
Well, that last Super Bowl, Peyton Manning wasn't throwing it to anybody. He's just out there. He could have been flipping it underhand. They had that one commercial about him working out and him being injured all the time. Did you see that?
No.
And I was like, why is he still in commercials? What, you didn't watch enough of the games? Were you not seeing Peyton Manning commercials already? They had like kids. You know how he does those commercials with kids? They were like doing their conditioning or whatever. And they're like, what's wrong, Peyton? And he's like, I'm getting too old. And he tried to do a push-up, couldn't do one. And then they had him in like an ice bath. He was all like wrapped up or something. I saw it and I thought, oh, I guess it is football season. I'm getting compliments on my shirt, the Michigan shirt, and that's when you know. When rivals start coming out, old ladies come out of nowhere and tell you that Michigan sucks. Like that's when you know college football's back. You don't get that with other teams, man. I'm telling you. Let's see what else. NFL stuff. I think that's pretty much all I had for the NFL because next week's going to be our premiere show. Now, we talked about it just as a mid-episode break here about trying to get a fantasy football draft show going. I'm going to try to put that together, see if anyone wants to hop on. If not, it might just be me. We'll see what happens. I'll give my thoughts all on there. I think most people will have their draft over with, though. So it can just be a fun extra episode that we'll put out. I'm also looking at doing or bringing back. We had tried it for the NFL playoffs the 1 year, bringing an extra tailgate show. I really want to do it for college football because I feel like the NFL stuff, our show's close enough on Tuesdays where I can remember like all the NFL stuff. But a lot of the college stuff I wrote down, I'm like, why did I write that down? So I'm going to try to bring back the shorter show. The platform we're doing, I think, got bought by like iHeartRadio, so there might be some changes. I'm going to try to roll it out. You can check southboundsports.com on Thursday. I'm going to do one before the Pitt, West Virginia game. That's going to be our biggest show. Just as a reminder, this is the last live show we're doing on Facebook. So you can go to southboundsports.com. I'll put the Patreon link there if you want to keep watching the live videos. We're just tired of them getting marked as like controversial for no reason, since we're just talking sports. Nothing offensive here, really. I mean, I guess if you're a fan of another team like Ohio State or something and you have thin skin, you might report it. But we're just going to move to Patreon and see how it goes. And then we'll still put links. The podcast ones should still be good. We had some issues there too, people reporting them, but we'll see what happens. We don't really swear or anything, so I really don't understand why platforms would be trying to take our stuff down. I really don't get it. But that's where you'll find all our new content. The same feed for podcasts will pretty much be the same, though. But we're going to try to get the extra content up. We're just figuring things out, so it might take us a little bit. But that's what you want to look for. Southboundsports.com on Thursday. And then Matt's games are on Friday. If there's a stream, I'll try to link them back up on the website again. And you can watch them there.
Or Thursday or Saturday. We're like the MAC this year.
You play on Thursday?
We have a Thursday game.
Not this week, do you?
No, this week we're on Friday, but it's all over the place.
I got an invitation to a webinar, and I'm like, don't you know the Backyard Brawls this time? Like, who's scheduling these? I should write that back. Like, did you even check my schedule before scheduling this webinar? Do I have to start blocking off college football times? My whole calendar will be full. Like, don't you get that? My main thing for college football, and the reason I put the midterm break in there is we're going to keep the podcast down this year. If you want the extended full version of the podcast with some extra content, you'll have to sign up to the Patreon and get your extended feed. So you'll be able to check that out. Well, that should be up and running with this episode. I just don't know if it'll be up and running right away or not. But we'll let you know. I'll let you know next week. The college football's kicking off. We got the big show. Doing playoff chances now. ESPN, I sent it to you, Matt. We'll start with the ones that didn't make the screenshot. Texas A&M, for whatever reason, everyone has been picking them. They have a 2% chance, according to ESPN. The same chance that Penn State, Michigan State, and for some reason, Auburn have. To me, Auburn has head coaching issues. How do they even have a 2% chance, right?
Yeah.
Penn State, Michigan State, I understand. They've won the Big Ten. If Mel Tucker didn't have last year's season, I would say they would probably be a 0-2 because he's kind of unproven. James Franklin's won the Big Ten. I see it. Jimbo Fisher won a natty at Florida State. I know it's a new school. They've been recruiting like gangbusters. So, yes, I see it. I do not see Auburn. Michigan State's kind of like a show me. The only reason I say that, I don't want people attacking me or trying to take us down for this. They got killed by Ohio State. I understand you beat Michigan. I get it. I'm not sour on that. I think that was a great coaching thing to make those adjustments. It's one of the things where people talk about Michigan losing their defensive coordinator. That game showed that he was still raw. And I don't think the defense is going to have as big of a drop-off as people expect because of that. If you go back and watch that Michigan State game, they shifted to the run. Michigan's defense made no adjustments. I don't know, though, if Mel Tucker has enough to get them to the playoffs because you can't have no game plan against Ohio State, which is the most talented team you play. How do you have no answer? How do you get blown out like that? It's not been like when Michigan blew out Penn State a couple times, and even when Penn State blew out Michigan back, it was kind of like a couple of bad plays got out of hand. The Michigan State-Ohio State game was not even close last year. That's why I would give Michigan State 0 chance, just like Auburn. The next tier, and you can interject at any time. I'm going to go through these all. LSU at 3%.
Well, time out. Before
Go ahead.
You hit on A&M. In my opinion, if you're going to put, I think A&M needs to be at that top tier. They beat Alabama last year.
Well, they don't have it as tiers. They have it as percents.
But I mean, like with their percent should be in the top 4.
I would say that there's a 3-tier system. I would say that the third tier would be Penn State, LSU. They have Oklahoma State at 4%, and then Utah at 6%. I would also include, because this is the one that kind of shocked me, Miami at 9%. Right? I think that should be your lower tier of, if they make it, great. Like Miami should not have a 9% chance.
They're not. They should be at 0%.
Why? Crystal ball, baby.
They haven't even won their own conference ever. Until you can at least win your conference, you don't get the national spotlight. They're like the Texas of we're back. Like
Texas is on here too as a 13%, and I almost let's throw them in the 3 tier. They have to be in the 3rd tier, right? I'm removing Michigan State and who else did I say? Auburn from my tier. They're not even in it. There's no 4th tier with them in it. Michigan State's not going to beat Ohio State. You have to beat Ohio State. Penn State has beat Ohio State. I don't know when's the last time Michigan State has beat Ohio State.
Look, if you're going to put Miami at 9%, if you've been in a coma since 2001, and then you're like, oh yeah, Miami's going to win. Like, I can totally understand where you're coming from. There's nothing in their team right now that says contending for championships when you're not even contending in the Coastal.
Well, this is what gets me, and I'm going to put a team in my 2nd tier that's not even on here, and that's Pitt. And I'm going to say why. They won the ACC last year, right? They got a new quarterback, USC transfer, right? Who's been supposedly playing well. I think the West Virginia game, my first prediction of the week, I think they're going to win it. It's at home. I don't like the direction West Virginia's been going in. I've always pulled for West Virginia. They have a great color scheme, very similar to Michigan. And I used to like their hard-nosed coaches. I always liked Rich Rod, Even after he flamed out at Michigan, I thought he should have been given one more year. And if they would have forced him to hire like a defensive coach, like I think Scott Frost needed, who knows? Maybe his offense would have been able to take off with that power run because Urban Meyer made it work at Ohio State. And so, are you going to be able to do something, Pitt? You have to beat West Virginia. They're 7.5-point favorites. I think that they win that game. The only thing that gets me on Pitt, and I think why they don't have them on this list, is for whatever reason, they haven't been following the SEC model. They scheduled West Virginia and Tennessee in the same season. They need to not schedule anyone tough. Only maybe one tough game, one rivalry game would be West Virginia. Why are you scheduling Tennessee? And then they have to avenge their loss against Western Michigan before going through an ACC schedule that is so soft that if Pitt doesn't go through there with one loss or less, I would be completely shocked. They only have one ranked game. It's at Miami. If they beat West Virginia and Tennessee and rip through that schedule, even if they lose to Miami, you're still just a conference championship game against Clemson away, and they've beaten them in the past. That's why I think last year what hurt them is they lose to Western Michigan. Don't do that. Like, Narduzzi should call me up and say, hey, come speak to the team before that game. And I would be like, guys, what are you doing? Don't do that. Don't lose this game. What are you losers doing? Don't be a loser. Like, do you want to be in the playoffs? What are they going to say? Like, nah. We have things better to do here at Pitt than, we don't really want to be playing on New Year's.
We got NIL money. We can go to the zoo.
So that's my second tier. I think Texas has dropped to that third tier. My second tier of playoff teams would be Pitt, Oklahoma, Michigan, and Notre Dame. They have Notre Dame as a 30% chance. No way. Because with a 30% chance, their only tough game was Ohio State. You're telling me they're going to be close in that game? If Ohio State boat races them,
if they get blown out in that game, though, they can play a bunch of wet T-shirts the rest of the year and still have a respectable record.
It's going to be the same thing that hurt them last year, though, where if Ohio State is in, like everyone's predicting, you're not going to have Notre Dame at 4 for a rematch for a team that they got killed against, while some of these other teams like Oklahoma State or Oklahoma most likely have a Big 12 championship. Or hell, they don't even have Baylor on here. Like, why wouldn't Baylor be in your tier 3 with Oklahoma State? Right? Honestly, I don't even know if I would have Oklahoma too. I might put all the Big 12 teams in the third tier.
Baylor, if you take Texas out and you put Baylor in, I think that's a better look. I think completely drop the bottom 4 because
I did drop them. I think the only Pac-12 chance is Utah. I don't think Oregon has a chance. I don't think Lincoln Riley has a chance with USC, which they're not even on here. I think Utah has to be able to make it through. I think the Big 12, like you're saying, I would agree with your list. Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Baylor. My only issue is they might beat each other up. And then you have a situation like last year where you need a certain team to win the championship, beat a team again. What if they don't do it? Like Oklahoma State, they're still probably haunted that they couldn't get that touchdown. They get that touchdown. Last year's playoffs are totally different. Georgia might not even make it. We don't know what happens. That's what I'm thinking with Notre Dame. Notre Dame gets killed by Ohio State. What's going to be their signature win? And I think if they lose that game, they're going to spiral with a brand new coach. How are you going to get that buy-in? I'm not sold on him as a coach. Brand new, you bring a guy in that's totally opposite of what Brian Kelly was doing, more defense-oriented, and you're going to go up against Ohio State. That's why I think Ohio State's going to do things to them. I hate to say it. I just don't think Notre Dame has a chance. Definitely not a 30% chance at the playoffs. Hell, Michigan has just as easy schedule as Notre Dame, and they get Ohio State 2, but they also have a chance to then possibly be in the Big Ten championship if Ohio State were to lose twice or something,
Yeah.
Notre Dame doesn't have that chance. Like, they lose that game, what redemption do you have? Clemson and Pitt, even if Pitt loses one, like I said, as long as it's not to Western Michigan or some other low team, any other ACC team last year, lose to any other team, and you're probably in the playoffs, right? But that one loss, just What are you doing? What are you doing? Or did they already have 2 losses? What was their record? Did they have 2? Like, that just haunts me so bad. Like, why are you losing that game? And then, of course, our top tier, Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia. I'd probably put Clemson in the second tier. I don't think their quarterback and they're losing Venables. I don't think that they're going to be the top tier.
I agree.
I think you have the top 3. I don't know if Alabama and Georgia both get in again. I think last year was a very, very, very lucky situation with Oklahoma State losing and Notre Dame losing to Cincinnati. Right? I think if either of them are reversed, I don't think they get 2 teams in. Actually, I guess the Cincinnati one really didn't matter since Cincinnati made it. The Oklahoma State one was the big one. And then Utah dropping the second game was the other big thing. Otherwise, they probably would have been in last year too. But gotta win the games, man. Pac-12 is not that tough, Utah. You talk about how everything's coming together and all this stuff. Don't lose nonsense games. And then you'll be right there. Like, if Mel Tucker can get it done, why can't you get it done? Those are my things. What new team? A team that hasn't made the playoff before. What do you think? If a team's going to make it, last year it would have been Michigan and Cincinnati. Do you think a team that hasn't made it before gets in, and who would it be?
No. I mean, the only one that I would say could potentially backdoor in would be A&M. And that's just because of how high the last couple recruiting classes have been. That, you know, when you're looking at that blue chip ratio, if the rankings are real and the recruits that A&M has truly are at that elite level, they should be close to turning that corner that Georgia did. And I think where you have the Oklahoma situation where Venables is leaving Clemson, I think Jimbo has the consistency at A&M now that he could potentially be in a position to have them take that next step.
What about Oklahoma State? They would be my pick.
I always just feel like with Oklahoma State, there's just something missing.
And it has been Oklahoma's coaching. I'm not sold on Venables as a head coach.
I can't put my finger on like what it specifically is with Oklahoma State. Like, I don't know if it's consistency with with anything, with their defense, with their offense. It's like they always feel like they're so close, and then they just give it like they end up losing a close game to some like.
But is it depth? Like, to me, that has been the thing with Michigan. Get a couple guys injured, especially at the quarterback position, and you're done. Last year, finally stay healthy, and you're in. I think Oklahoma State could be there. The one thing where the reason I don't say Baylor, and I do like Aranda, I think that a lot of like the pollsters just don't like Baylor. You know? I feel like there's a hate. I don't want to say a hate towards Baylor, but I feel like there is a pull against them where it's like back whenever it was them or TCU, I think people looked at those two teams and were like, we don't want either of them in, so we're not putting them in. We're just going to put Ohio State in.
Well, and I think that maybe that's just it. Like with Oklahoma State, you have Dave Aranda at Baylor. You had Gary Patterson at TCU that were very heavy defensive-minded coaches. And maybe it was just having such a, like, for as wide open as the offenses were in the Big 12, just having to deal with those types of defensive coordinators that it gave them enough fits that they had a trip-up game. And in the Big 12, like, we've discussed this at length, where one loss in the Big 12 pretty much sunk the battleship.
And my thing with that is, too, I don't think the Big 12 went to bat for them. Maybe it was like Oklahoma and Texas behind the scenes, but it was almost like, hey, we're not going to throw our weight behind these guys. Like, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do anything. And that's why I'm always shocked whenever people are like, well, the Big Ten didn't want to expand playoffs, but for whatever reason, they wanted automatic qualifiers, which is dumb. And I'm thinking every other conference and every other fan of every other team, whether it's NC State, Oklahoma State, Baylor, whatever, if you're not for automatic qualifiers, you're an idiot. Because that's the only chance your team has. If your team hasn't been in the playoffs yet, or at least been close, hell, Penn State could have benefited, right? They win the Big Ten, should have been in, get ripped off. Like Michigan, Michigan would never have got ripped off, let's be honest. But like last year, if Cincinnati would have been ripped off, all you have to do is put the extra qualifier in. Put it in. If your team's been ripped off from a playoff spot, you want automatic qualifiers. There's no other answer for you. I don't understand what you don't realize is you complained about Ohio State sneaking in twice, but yet you think your team's going to have a chance to sneak in? And honestly, do you think your team has a chance to go undefeated? Because how many times in their history has that happened? Probably not that many times, if at all. But yet it's miraculously supposed to happen for you? Like, don't be mad at the sport for it evolving. Push for change that's fair. I think every conference should have an auto bid. Now, whether we contract to only like 8 major, like giant conferences and 8 teams in like a 16-team playoff, half of them are auto bids, half of them are like at large, I think that would be fair, right? And I honestly think that could be where we're going. There's 10 conferences right now. If the Big Ten keeps expanding and then the SEC expands to match, I think then the ACC and the Big 12 have to expand to match because let's be honest, some of those schools are getting left behind. Wake Forest, nothing against you, you're going to be left behind. So you're going to be merging with App State or wherever other schools are on there. And I think 2 conferences are going to die. There'll probably be 8 conferences left. Do auto bids. I'm sure Michigan would love to play the winner of the MAC in the playoffs instead of playing Georgia first round, right? Right?
Fair enough.
Like if we went back last year and it's like, hey, you guys got to play, I don't know who won it. Was it Western Michigan? I know they beat Pitt. And Michigan already killed them. So like if it was them again, they'd be like, Harbaugh would be like, all right, awesome. This would be a great warm-up game, you know. We can throw some of our stuff in there. Maybe throw some trick plays in to really catch people off guard like he did against Iowa in the Big Ten championship. Much better than playing Georgia as an at-large. So I think the conferences would kind of open up to say like, well, the NCAA tournament does it and the number 1 seed wins 99 point whatever % of the time, except for Virginia that one time. Why don't we do that for our playoff? And if people don't watch that first game, whatever. They can still watch the middle at-large team play Pitt or whatever other team gets in there. Perfect. It's a perfect scenario. But that's going to be it for our show. We got the final bell and stuff. We're going to save that for after. So if you want to hear the full version of the show, go to the Patreon. Go to southboundsports.com. Look for the Patreon link in the menu. It'll be up whenever the podcast gets posted. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.